Service members, what is your worst military wife story? Viewer edition.
Well, folks, you got to hear all of the stories about people, military wives, and bad things that happened concerning them, mostly involving cheating. There's so many about cheating. And we asked you what your terrible military wife stories were, and I mean, it's going to be a lot more of that. It's just going to be a lot more of that. I can feel it in my soul. But I hope they're not too bad, and I hope all of you are doing all right. So, let's get to it. Story 1. Content warning. This story does involve self-termination. So if you are sensitive to that, please skip to the time code on screen right here. Editor, put in the time code for the end of the story if you can. And that way, you can skip past this one. I had a buddy whose wife cheated on him during our deployment. She knew she was going to lose everything, so she accused him of touching their 4-year-old daughter. One thing led to another. He was arrested, posted bail, was housed in the barracks under guard, but ended up tying sheets around his neck and jumping out the 3rd-floor barracks window, committing self-termination. Turns out she did, in fact, make it all up. When the child was questioned separately from her mother, she said her mom had told her what to say to the police. Absolutely crazy. I wonder just how crappy the police/command must have treated him to make him think he was going to be convicted no matter what. At least that's what I guess his reasoning was for ending his life. I cannot stand people who would make up these kind of lies about someone. I don't care if you think you're going to lose a bunch of money or anything. To falsely accuse someone of touching a child is just awful. And there should be a jail sentence for making up something like that, because that can ruin lives, as it very clearly ruined his. Yeah, I don't have anything great to add, but folks, if you're having thoughts about taking your own life, anything like that, please talk to someone you trust. I genuinely mean that. I've lost folks. I don't want anyone else to. Story 2. Navy veteran. I've got 3. 1. Buddy was sent a tape while still in boot camp of a woman being railed by 5 guys. To punish him for a dirty tape being sent to him in boot camp, they're PTing him while the video plays and he sobs. The guy's all finished and the woman looks at the camera, says his name, and that she wants a divorce. 2. Guy was enlisting at the same place a girl was out processing. She talks him into a quickie wedding. She refuses to relocate to his base. She wants to stay in New York with him funding her lifestyle. She drains his bank account and files paperwork saying that he's being financially abusive. This gets the vast majority of his paycheck diverted to her private account. They go to get divorced, we get deployed. Despite the Soldiers and Sailors Act, which states that court proceedings which require the service member's presence cannot proceed while the service member is deployed, the judge grants the divorce and all marital assets and saddles him with all marital debt. 3. I'm messing around with this girl. I find out that she's married when she tells me that her husband is being stationed on my ship. I cut things off, but try to remain friendly. Fast forward a couple months, and she and her husband announce that she's pregnant. My friend and I all offer our congratulations. We're all smiles and finally ask how far along she is. Girl and husband leave. As soon as the elevator door closes, 4 of us started counting on our fingers. We notice each other and pull the Spider-Man meme. As far as any of us could gather, it wasn't any of ours. Apparently, she had us on a rotation, so none of us found out about the other. So we decide that it's probably your husband's kid and leave it at that. Another couple of months go by, I left the Navy, she has a kid. I don't know if he found out the kid wasn't his, found out about the cheating, or if he just had a psychotic break or what. He kills the kid, he's in prison. She attended every parole hearing he's had to argue against his release. I haven't gotten any further details, but she wants him to rot in prison for the rest of his natural life. Since his initial arrest, and honestly probably since before his arrest, she's been with yet another friend of mine. Don't know, as he wasn't present when she announced her pregnancy. It's been about 20 years ago now, and we were all around 20 at the time. All right, folks, I don't want to repeat this over a lot of different stories, and if you've made this mistake, please, I'm not trying to judge you personally in anything, but if you are in the military and you're going to be deployed, please don't get married. Please don't. Don't. First off, you're usually much younger, 19, 20. That's not a great age to be getting married. You're still figuring a lot out about yourself. And B, you're under the stressful situation of being deployed, something that can be potentially very dangerous. And you're not in a great state of mind to be making that kind of commitment. And neither is your partner necessarily. There's so much growing and maturing to do, and it's just an unnecessary stress to put on a relationship. That's not to say that it doesn't work out sometimes. I'm absolutely certain it does, but if you really do love each other, then love waits and is patient for both, for getting married, and it should wait and not involve cheating if you are married. But I don't know. If you are young enough and you're thinking about going into the service and you've got a guy or a gal or a non-binary person that you love and you want to dedicate yourself to, I beg you to hold off. And if you are in love, they should understand. I think it's for the best. That's just my opinion. And you absolutely do what you want, but just be careful, folks. I just wanted to say that at least once during this video.
Story 3. My wife cheated on me a couple hundred times when I was on my second deployment to Afghanistan. When I got back, I found out that she had cheated on me the whole time, and I was like, right, so we're getting divorced. Shortly after the divorce, I slept with her best friend for a week because I was young and brash. And then I found out the best friend had actually helped her cheat on me, so that I slept with the best friend's mom for a week right after that. Story 4. For a cute, wholesome military spouse story, I present my great-grandparents. My great-grandpa was a merchant marine in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Those unaware of what a merchant marine is, they transport cargo during peacetime and transport military equipment, ammunitions, etc. during wartime. My great-grandma was a waitress. A year or two after the war ended, my great-grandpa met my great-grandma at the diner she worked at and promptly told his buddies he was going to marry her or die trying. After a few weeks of asking her, my grandma agreed to go on a date with him. They married soon after, had 4 children, and began a successful business together. Despite my great-grandpa being a foul-mouthed sailor and my great-grandma being a classy, well-spoken Catholic girl, they were happily married for almost 60 years until my great-grandpa passed. He died before I was born, but my great-grandma loved him until the day she died.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Because I don't know how many, really nice, sweet stories that we're going to get, but that is a pretty wholesome story. And I'm glad that they were in love and got to have all those years together. So it's nice to read something on the positive side. I really do appreciate it.
Story 5. Not a wife story, but a female Marine in my platoon who had been administratively separated once already for what we will call integrity violations was allowed to enlist again. Accused my motor T shop chief of flashing his penis at her in his office. His office was a shipping container with a desk, a light, and a fan at the front of the shop, and the door was always open so everyone could see inside at all times, and he could see out and have a view of the whole shop. No witnesses to corroborate her story, but in the military, you are guilty until you prove your innocence. He spent 6 months in the brig waiting for his court-martial, and when it finally came, several of us acted as material and character witnesses for his defense. We had photo and video evidence of her doing exactly what she accused him of doing because she would crash parties she wasn't invited to and just be as promiscuous as possible. Worst part is that she was married to another Marine who was deployed in Afghanistan. Charges were dropped against my shop chief, and new charges were filed against her for false accusations, adultery, and other crimes of feminine licentious nature. They asked him if he still wanted to re-enlist after letting him out of the brig. He did not. Story 6. There was one guy in my squad who married his high school girlfriend of 5 years right after getting into the Fleet Marine Corps. First combat deployment to Iraq in 2008, no problems. About a year later, our company was deployed on the USS Wasp for a 90-plus day deployment. As we were off the shore of North Carolina by Camp Lejeune, he was trying to call his wife, but the number would not connect. Turns out she took out $50,000 in credit card debt, drained his accounts, about another $30,000, and disappeared. Even her family didn't know where she went or how to contact her. Story 7. Something similar to story 1 happened to my wife. She was waiting in line at Starbucks on base and some woman turned around, didn't say hi or where are you from or anything normal, just, what's your husband's rank? My wife was dumbfounded and said, hi, my name is blank and I'm from blank. Again, the woman repeated the question and my wife answered, he's a PFC. The lady then said to her, well, my husband is an SSG, so you have to listen and do everything I tell you. My wife had the best response to this lady. I don't have to do crap that you say. You turn around to talk to me, so why don't you turn back and F off? God, I love my wife.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the original video where we got these comments from you all, there was basically just a woman who thought that because her husband was, some superior officer in the military that she had magic power too. And, no, why? Even if, honest to God, if you're just out and about at a Starbucks and you're in the military and you happen to come across your superior officer at the Starbucks and he was just like, hey, let me in line in front of you, I'd be like, no, stay in the line. This isn't the military right now. This is Starbucks and I was here first. Anyone who would wield their power in that kind of way is just kind of a donk.
Story 8. All of these just remind me of the people living on base. Some women couldn't wait for their men to deploy. How about a wholesome story? My mom and dad have been married for nearly 30 years, and each time he had to deploy, mom would send the biggest care package she could each day. She even bought him gag gifts, such as calendars with half-naked men and women on them. One time she even sent an empty beer keg that contained a blow-up kiddie pool with a palm tree. The troops loved my mom because my dad would share the candy and coffee. The troops even made an alcohol-free tiki bar with all the gifts Mom had sent. Dad is now retired and Mom still gets some gifts, and the troops still remember my mom's care packages. Story 9.
Content warning for Story 9. Unfortunately, this story does involve self-termination. So once again, if you are sensitive to that topic, you might want to go to this time code right here. That'll bring you to the end of this story. And then you can continue on with the video.
My brother's wife cheated on him with his superior officer. He hung himself. She collected $1,000 a month in survivor benefits for I don't even know how long. B invites my family out to dinner a little over a year later to invite us to her commitment ceremony with her new military boyfriend. They weren't getting married because we don't think we need to bring pen and paper into this. Couldn't be the fact that she'd lose her free blood money or anything. Story 10. I was dating a girl who wanted to get married before my first deployment. I actually listened to the training we got about how bad of an idea that was and didn't do it. Within 3 months of my departure, she met and married a dude from another service who was also getting ready to deploy. After he left, she cheated on him and cleaned him out. During his mid-deployment leave, he had to deal with all of that and divorce her. He tried to kill himself once he got back overseas, got kicked out of the military for continuing to do bat-crap crazy stuff over the next year, and eventually got arrested/convicted for murdering and dismembering a girl he was dating. Dependas will literally drive you insane.
I'm gonna push back on this one just a little bit. Now, the cheating, what she did and stuff, not okay. In the wrong, for sure. Reacting by murdering and dismembering somebody, not her fault. I'm sorry, but there comes a point where a person has to, take responsibility for their actions. And, I've had some messier breakups. I've been in some bad situations, but how I react to that and what I do is on me, not the other person. So, will literally drive you insane. If you're a person who's going to be murdering and dismembering somebody, that person already had some issues that maybe that cheating and stuff was just a catalyst for releasing.
Story 11. Our ship was returning to port with the other 3 ships that was part of the task force. All 4 ships usually moored next to each other. While manning the rail, one sailor started having fits and getting verbal while in formation. He managed to spot his wife near the other ship, kissing and hugging another sailor. As soon as they dismissed us, he was off to the pier. His wife was unaware that he saw her, and right when she went to kiss him, he decked her and turned around and turned himself over to the ship's security. Story 12. I wasn't in the military, but I had a friend who knew a guy who was always away in the Army Reserve, asked him to watch out for his wife and kids. While he was there, he'd hear stories of cheating wives and shortly after ask his wife to tell him to stop visiting. Not surprising enough, his wife was having some, let's just say a super friendly conversation with another married man on which he found out about. He and his wife patched things up and he apologized to the friend, but in a way I felt bad for the guy given he wasn't trusting enough but was asked to be a friend and watch out for family. Story 13. Navy kid here on behalf of my mom, Navy spouse. This happened when I was maybe 7 or 8 and we were living overseas. There was only a small Navy and a small Air Force base, so everybody knew everybody. One day at church during a time where almost everyone was deployed at once, my mom and a few other spouses were talking while I and the other kids were playing after the church service or whatever. I don't really remember that well. Apparently, the topic of faithfulness came up in the conversation, and someone else happened to join the conversation when my mom made the oh-so-scandalous idea that the least a spouse can do is stay faithful to their partner during a deployment. The lady who had just joined the convo didn't take that very well since she had been cheating on her husband and called my mom a S. I didn't understand what that meant at the time, but according to Mom, she never talked to that lady again and even went as far as changing churches when she started harassing her. Again, I was like 7, so I don't really remember this. It's mostly retelling what my mom told me years later. Story 14. Our sub and our sister sub were coming back from deployment. They got to heading first. If you know deployments, you also know the kind of hell yeah atmosphere on the pier as families waited for their men to pull in. When we finally rolled in, the crowd waiting for us specifically was massive. Lots of happy, cheering folks. The other pier where our sister boat was, not so much. Damn near empty. We were only a half-hour difference, and that boat had been pierside with sailors going about their business. We learned that a good many of those sailors' wives had just been put in jail a few days prior. They had apparently started a brothel while their men were away. Yeah, Command hadn't wanted to tell the guys until they arrived for obvious reasons.
They started a brothel while their men were away? Where did this happen? What? And I'm trying to, piece this together in my head. It's just kind of a wild story. But, all these military wives got together and they're just like, all of our husbands are gone. What should we do, gals? I know. Let's start up a brothel. It seems a little far-fetched, but, I know. Who am I to judge? I'm a far-fetched human being.
Story 15. Here's mine. My last deployment, I had a close buddy of mine who didn't make it back. As I watched the light fade from his eyes, the last words he uttered in this world was the name of his wife. A few months later, we get back to the world, and she was 4 months pregnant with another man's kid who was conceived while we were gone. She still got his insurance, payments, everything. There was a huge fight between his mother and widow at the funeral over the money, of course. The worst part about this isn't that it happened. It's that it happened so often we get unofficial briefings about it. We did the math, and it seems around 34 to 38% ballpark rate of an unfaithful spouse while deployed, and those are only the ones we know about. Story 16. Almost lost my virginity to a military wife who wanted to cheat on her husband/father of her daughter with 2 guys. Didn't realize it when I got invited over, noped out of there when I saw what was going on. The other guy? Yeah, he stayed. Still have trust issues to this day. Story 17. My husband and I married at 22. We are the only couple in our block of base housing that hasn't had an affair. It's disgusting. Story 18. Friend of mine was in the Marines. His wife wasn't feeling good, so they went to the hospital on base. Doctor said she's 6 months pregnant. He laughed, stood up, said, I just got back from 15 months in Afghanistan 2 weeks ago. He walked away. Base logs showed she'd been getting a visitor twice a week for a year, but since the guy was her brother-in-law... Story 19. My buddy from a different unit was supposedly deploying, but they canceled his order literally while he was boarding the plane. It was super early in the morning, and I worked night shift, so I drove him home. We saw a truck in the driveway, and long story short, I had to drag him off a dude. He had been gone a total of like 2 hours, and she already had a dude there. She still got half his stuff in the divorce and was in trouble for assaulting the guy. It was a whole big pile of crap.
I mean, I will say, I think the person should get in trouble for assaulting the guy. Yeah, no, cheating. Wrong. And I certainly be upset to find out that your partner is cheating. Like, it's not cool, it's not okay, but resorting to physical violence because of that, also not okay. So, I mean, I know you're angry and upset, and you have every right to be, but we need to channel that into, I don't know, go out and play some golf or something, or that's more frustrating. Whatever. Figure something else out. Don't be violent.
Story 20. I've got one from my time as an MP. This was back in 2007. Domestic cases against men were just starting to be taken more seriously, but the road ahead was still long. Anyways, I was riding with a Department of the Army cop that night, basically a civilian who works as a cop on post. We get the call for a domestic happening on post and managed to be the second car there. After parking, my partner and I met up with the ones who showed up first, who then told us they met with the wife who'd ran out screaming as soon as the cops showed up. They then told us as soon as the husband came out, they tackled him and placed him in the back of the car. After paramedics showed up, our car was tasked with transporting it to the hospital while the first car took the husband to the provost marshal office. At the hospital, the doc checking on the wife asked us for the story, and we told them what we knew. The doc said that the story wasn't adding up with the markings on her. Her forearms were covered in scratches and bruises, but nothing else was. We then called up the desk sergeant and informed him of what we were told, and he had the husband examined. He called us back and informed us that the husband was checked and they found a ton of deep gashes up and down his back. He was then questioned, and he told the desk sergeant that his wife had attacked him with a power cord from a toaster. The desk sergeant then checked the calls and heard the husband's voice making the call while the wife could be heard in the background screaming that they'd never believe him. After that, we informed the wife of her rights, arrested her, and on the way back, we waved at the patrol car carrying her husband as she cried. Story 21. Had a buddy when I was in the Army who told his wife if she cheated on him while he was deployed, he'd sleep with her best friend. She said the joke was on him. Her sister was her best friend. He said, even better. So she ended up cheating almost immediately after we deployed, and they got divorced before deployment was even over. We got back, and the first weekend that we had off after returning from deployment, guess who came to pick him up from the barracks? None other than his ex-sister-in-law.
I feel like if you've gotten married and you're about to be deployed and you feel the need to go up to your partner and be like, by the way, if you cheat on me when I'm deployed, I'm going to sleep with your best friend. That doesn't sound like the best relationship to begin with. I feel like there might be some problems that need to be addressed, possibly concerning like trust and stuff like that, because it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point, maybe.
Story 22. I remember shopping for some food at the base commissary and saw the wife of a friend who I hadn't seen in a few months as we both had moved positions. I was just about to wave and greet her when she turns to make eye contact with me. Her eyes get huge and worried, and suddenly she grabs this guy and pulls him down another aisle. Took me a second to realize what I saw and suddenly felt really bad for my friend, but I no longer had his number and didn't really have a way to get a hold of him. Story 23. Damn, these stories are horribly painful. One time a buddy of mine called me up, needed my help. Of course, dude. Picked him up and we drove around while he was telling me he heard his wife was cheating. Well, let's find out. Made some calls and got an address in another city. He knocked on the door and a young woman opened. I was surprised that she knew his wife's name and he just entered. I was a bit worried about his safety, not knowing what to expect, so I followed him, covering his back while making sure I could control him if whatever. He entered a room, and looking over his shoulder, I saw his wife in bed with another man. I literally heard his heart breaking. That was so painful. I pulled him out of there, and we drove back home. The longest silent ride ever. They got divorced, and luckily they didn't have kids at the time. Fast forward a year later, by accident, I saw a trailer of a game show, Who Wants to Date a Millionaire, with his ex-wife, Maddie. Story 24. My ex cheated on her husband the entire time he was deployed. She was such a snake about it. The girlfriend of one of the guys she blew found and was going to tell him, but she got his phone and blocked their numbers. He never found out. Fortunately, he divorced her due to other reasons. From what I heard, he was a solid dude. E.g., if you ever read this, good on you, man. Hope you're living a good life. Story 25. I've got two local stories. My ex-friend, dropped her when I figured out what a stupid bee she was, had a husband who went to fight in Iraq. She and I were no longer friends at this time. She got a new friend, and eventually, while her husband was overseas, she screwed her best friend's husband behind her back, got pregnant, had a secret, not so secret because the tail got out, abortion. Then her husband came home. His daughter began telling him of all the uncles that came to stay all night at their house while he was gone in a war. That mommy kissed these uncles, and it was gross. She was little and didn't understand at the time and blabbered on like little kids do. So that's how he found out he was married to a hoe, sadly. He divorced her immediately. Story 2, my husband works with a guy who started having an affair with his own son's wife. He was also married to the mom, while his son was overseas fighting for the country. She filed for divorce while he was gone and married his dad when his divorce went through. Don't worry, guys, I'm sure he'll get in a few years when she gets tired of being married to an old geezer and follows her vahuhu to greener, younger pastures. And then that jerk can have fun dying alone with no wife and kids by him while he does. Right now, everyone at the workplace openly mocks him. They're both social pariahs and no one wants them around. Everywhere he goes, people audibly talk about him as he walks away, about what he did to his own son. There's always someone new who just joined being filled in on the story, so it never ends. He's always in a bad mood at work, husband says. I can't imagine why. Story 26. I was on several deployments where 99% of the married guys were openly cheating and their wives would find out because the woman they slept with in the countries would find their wives on Facebook and blackmail the guys saying, either give us $5,000 or we tell your wives. Some guys wouldn't pay up, so their wives would tell all the other guys' wives, and it was amazing. They would literally threaten to unalive, but it's like, you cheated on them. You get what you get, I guess.
Well, hey, I'm at least glad we got, a little bit of the other side of the equation going on here. Not glad that it also involves just more infidelity, but this time, all the husbands going off overseas and cheating. See? Everyone can suck. Isn't that a great ending note? Now we're all happy. Bye.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.